Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Brokovo. Jim, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you. It's nice of you to have me on.
Glad to do it. I've talked with Alex on numerous occasions about the work that he is doing over there at CIRSOVA magazine. And of course, Mike Tierney is on here regularly with our LCS Guys show. So glad to meet more of the CIRSOVA family.
Oh, like I said, it's nice to be here. I haven't had the opportunity to meet them in person, but I'm obviously very familiar with their work. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you've so tell us how that came to be. How did you get involved with publishing through CIRSOVA magazine? I mean, are they, have you been writing for years before this? This is the point where you come in and be the next fantasy Stephen King, and I have totally not known your name.
I wish that were true. I'm working toward being the next fantasy Stephen King, but I'm not there yet. But I had been writing for a long time. You talk to writers, and a lot of them are like compulsive storytellers. They've just been doing it all their lives, and at some point you got to decide whether or not you're going to start trying to do it more than just entertain your kids or something like that. So I had been kind of writing short stories and peddling them for a couple years by the time CIRSOVA started, and it almost didn't work out because when Alex first started, he's advertising for these ray gun romance sort of things, John Carter of Mars, and that's not really what I was doing at the time. And in some ways, it's still not what I'm doing, but CIRSOVA is a new magazine, and I'm looking for markets to send my stuff to, and I'm thinking, this isn't exactly what I have, and maybe I shouldn't even apply. And then I thought about a story that I had called Blood and Bones, and it's a pirate, fantasy pirate sort of story. And it's not something that Lee Brackett would have written. And again, I almost didn't submit it. Then I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to reject myself. I'm going to make him do that. So, so I'm going to send it in. If he doesn't want it, that's fine. But at least I'll have given it a shot. And so I sent it in, and he liked it. He liked it a lot. And in fact, he made the entire issue a kind of a pirate themed issue. And it was the first time any of my stories had made the cover. It has a cool illustration by Jabari Weathers, I think it is, did the cover illustration for that one. And so I'm like, okay, so this is something, even though it's not ray gun fantasy, it is something that CIRSOVA is interested in. And I had this idea for a series that I had been writing for a while. So I wrote to Alex, completely separate from a submission, and I said, this is an idea I have. And I described what the Mongoose and the Meerkat was. And he said, that sounds like an interesting thing, something that we might be interested in. I mean, he was pretty smart to not commit to it right there, but said,
sure.
Send me the first story. So I sent him the first story, and he's like, yeah, absolutely. This is something we'd be interested in doing. So we started off there, and we had an understanding that this was an 18 story series. It had a beginning and it had an end, but all of the chapters, if you were independent stories, so that because he's publishing it in a magazine, he doesn't need to worry about somebody picking up the third chapter and not knowing what the heck is going on. You may not know what happened in 1 and 2, but this is still a complete self-contained story that you can hopefully enjoy and understand without having read the first 2. And if you want to skip around or take them out of order, that's fine. But at the end of the day, you can also read them in order and get something else out of them by doing so. And that would have been the 6th issue of CIRSOVA. I think it was 2017 that we started running the Mongoose and Meerkat.
Now, that was the magazine chapters were individual self-contained stories that still moved the narrative forward. This book here is a collection, I believe, the third collection. Does this take it through the end of the story, or have we not seen yet the end of the story?
Nope, this takes us through the end of the story, but we also haven't seen the end of the story yet. So this is a little bit of a bonus if you wanted to support the Kickstarter and just couldn't wait to see how I wrap it up. This is the way to get it before it comes out in the magazine. So there are 3 more that still need to be published. We've done 15 of them, The 16th one will be in the spring issue of CIRSOVA, and that'll be released before the book comes out on Kickstarter. Kickstarter will be done, then the spring issue will come out, and then the Kickstarter will fulfill. Then we'll take a break for one issue, and then the last two stories will be coming out in the fall and winter issues. So if you don't back the Kickstarter, which, you know, I strongly urge you to do so, but if you decide not to, and you just buy the magazines, you can still find out what happens in the story arc. You just won't get the preview of an upcoming novel that CIRSOVA and I will be releasing either this year or next year. And like the first two volumes of Mongoose and Meerkat, there is a standalone story in there that's not published anywhere else that you only get by buying the book. There's one of those in the Redemption of Onus as well.
So that is two good reasons to get a hold of the Kickstarter. One being the early access, and two being the extra content. So, you know, and by the way, the link to that Kickstarter is right below the video, folks. So it's in that description. If you want to click on it here on YouTube, do so. It won't take you away from the interview. You'll be able to still hear everything that Jim's got to say. While you are throwing some money at the campaign looks something kind of like this. You're well over goal. You know, you're 2757. That's going to be our starting point. Would love to see these numbers change, and I'm sure that
we
Alex
blew
would like
past
that as well.
Blew past the initial thing, and here he is. Excellent. Yeah, we've covered the goal amount. So we've made the Kickstarter, and obviously we'd like to get more. The more money we make on this, the more money, obviously, you know, as an author, I make and put to good use. But also the same thing for Alex at CIRSOVA. It allows him to buy more and better stories. It allows him to do more and better illustrations. So yeah, just because we've made the initial 500, these are great stories, and it's a good magazine to support.
So, Alex, what was it about Mongoose and Meerkat that sold you on this?
Hey guys, sorry I'm running a little late. You know, they were just really good, really fun stories. You know, I mean, before Mongoose and Meerkat, Jim had sent us a romantic pirate adventure that was really good. We ran that in our third issue. That was actually, I think that was our cover story, wasn't it, Jim?
It was. It was.
Yeah, yeah. And he came to me with this proposition. It's like, I've got this series that I've got of this duo of roguish swordsmen, mercenaries for hire and whatnot, and you'd like to take a look at it. I said, sure, I'd love to take a look at it. And I really enjoyed the first story that he sent. And he's like, well, I got more of them. I'm like, well, keep sending them to me. And then eventually Jim explained to me, he's like, no, I've got all 18 of them written. They're done. I'm like, well, okay, people seem to like the series, so I'll just go ahead and pay you for all of them now to run in the magazine serially. And so I think that was about maybe 2.5 years ago. And ever since then, we've been running one story per issue, and we started collecting them after the first half dozen was out, and we collected the first 5 in the first volume. Then we collected the next 6. This is going to collect the last 7 stories, including 2 that will be published in this collection first before we run them serially in the magazine.
Yeah, we were just talking about that, and one of the things that you know that you get to pitch now is the same thing. Give us the same pitch you gave to Alex, because we have, you know, people in the chat here who are looking at it and they're not quite sure what it is. It's not a comic book, but it is a story with illustrations.
Yeah, they're it's fully illustrated fantasy short fiction anthology. You know, it's kind of like the Fafford and Grey Mouser or Conan stories, except they tell a complete story in the cycle. And starting with the first collection, we decided to start doing illustrations for each of the stories, and we've been adding a little bit on ever since. So it's kind of like a light novel.
Yeah. So who are these people?
So they're I don't know. It dates me a little bit if I pick up on this Fafhrd and the Grey Mouse or Fritz Lieber's thing. But back in the day, it was sort of the adventuring trope of a couple adventurers who were just out to have fun. And probably Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser are the most famous ones. And they went out and they just had adventures for the sake of having adventures, and there was no real purpose for them. Each story was its own story, but because they didn't have any set goals beyond the adventure, none of the stories really did either. So each of these, this is taking that idea and it's trying to. It sounds pretentious to say improve upon something that Fritz Lieber wrote because multiple awards, a lot of recognition, all that sort of stuff. So I'll just say sort of maybe dust it off and bring it up to date a little bit more. But take that idea of swashbuckling adventurers, and then adding a few new twists along the way. So there is a purpose by the time you've read all of the stories and you get to where we are in the magazine. I mean, there was a time when people are saying, hey, I think something's going on in the background. I really think that Kat has more to her than is readily apparent. And as an author, I'm like cheering in the background because I'm like, yay, you got it. And we're to the point where we now see where Kat has been taking things. And I don't want to say too much about that because I want to encourage people to buy the book and figure out where exactly she's taking them.
Yeah, we got a question in the chat, how many pages it is. This looks like it's going to be coming out to about 150 pages, but it's more relevant is the word count, I think. I think it's this one's going to be about 40,000 words of the Mongoose and Meerkat stories, plus another 10 to 15,000 words of the bonus content.
Yeah, because you're getting five of the stories from the magazines, and then 2 of the stories that haven't been printed yet in the magazine. They'll be printed after this, so you're getting early access to these stories.
Yeah,
and you're
plus
getting an
we're
additional
throwing in
short
a
story
bonus
that's not
short
counted.
story and the first chapter of Jim's next novel with us. But
Which is
as
also
to
fantastic.
yeah, it's great. It's going to be up there with Stardust and the Princess Bride. Once people get a
Oh,
chance to read it.
I'm sold. So yeah, it's
But
it sounds like the story's reading fast.
Yeah, as for who Kat and Mongoose are, the first story that Jim sold me, the Battlefield of Karis, you have Mongoose, who's in a bar. He's made a bet. He's big on his drink and having fun, and he's braggadocious, and he enters this bet to see if he could find this relic on this battlefield. And he ends up teaming up with Kat, who's this sort of mysterious rogue girl, she's more than meets the eye. But that's how they first meet and start having adventures together. So you have Mongoose, who he kind of lives for the moment. He's in the adventures for the immediate payoff, the drinks that it'll buy him in the tavern, the stories he'll be able to tell, the girls that'll be able to impress. Meanwhile, Kat has been, she's playing the long game. She's the preparer. She's the one who's saving up the money that she earns from their gigs, what she's been saving it for, what she's using it on. That's what's going to come up in this third volume.
Right, because again, to reiterate, these are all standalone short stories, but they're telling an overarching arc. You can pick up any chapter and find out who these people are, what they're doing. But if you read from beginning to end, there's a progression.
Yep.
So looking at what you got available here, $3 for the ebook. That is incredibly cheap for an ebook, especially that many pages, 140 pages.
Yeah,
$20
and
for a
like I
pocket
said,
paperback. Is that when you say pocket paperback, is that literally the mass market size?
yeah,
That we
it's
used to
pretty
see?
close to the classic mass market size. For the first volume, we were able to offer those a little bit cheaper, but changes to print, just realities of print, have made it so that those end up costing us about as much as the trade, in some cases more. but because we wanted to be able to keep people who bought the original first volume in the pocket size, if you wanted to be able to get a full set of them in that trim size, we're offering so you'd still be able to collect it and have standard size, so you don't have like one little one and two big ones, or
Of
two little
course.
ones and one big one.
And you know what you do now, Alex. You know, and you know this is what this is my job. I come on here and say what you ought to do now. Now that you've got it finished, I can see the hardcover, which is more of a magazine dimension as far as the front area space. $35 for a linen wrapped hardcover. That's gonna be nice. But what you can do now with the pocket paperbacks or the linen wrapped hardcovers or even the trade paperbacks is you get a box design with wraparound artwork, and you sell them as the set, just like those Chronicles of Narnia boxes or any other, the Harry Potter box sets.
Well, that's something that we could look into maybe for the future. If we do well enough with this, we might offer a box set version somewhere down the road. We do have plans for Mongoose and Meerkat beyond this, but right now we're wanting to focus on get that story out there, get it told. Um, and one of the things that if people are really interested in wanting to see more out of this, one of the best things they can do is pick up a couple of those original pieces of artwork, because those are already pretty much paid for. Some of those have been paid for a long time, especially the ones that we've already run in the magazine. So if you buy those, that's pretty much gravy to CIRSOVA Publishing, and that's money that we can put straight back into more artwork for the magazine, for Jim's projects, and just anything else.
Yeah. Now this is artwork by, I believe it's Dark Philly.
Yeah.
We see Dark Philly in and about the Twitterverse now and then, so we are familiar with this person. I like these chess pieces here: the queen taking the king, or maybe it's not a king, maybe it's a knight. I don't know. Oh, it's the king. He's got the cross on his head.
Yeah, it's a game called Regum the King's Game, and there are some similarities to chess. Those are supposed to be life-size enchanted pieces that are then controlled by the players, and there are 6 players in a game, so it gets a little
sort of
nasty.
like a chess variant that is also an RTS. Or maybe it's like a MOBA. Epic fantasy MOBA.
So $275 for what I think is most of these. There's Mongoose and the Submarine. So this
these
is
are all ink on paper.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think the setting. It's not really medieval. It's I'm not quite sure where you put it. Whether it's like a steampunk or just a Dragonlance.
That was one of the things that I really enjoyed about writing it, is because it is a fantasy setting, I can just sort of plop it into a world, and as long as I'm reasonably consistent, it gives me the ability. I mean, with 18 stories, if I just kept it in one small setting, it would kind of get boring and stale. But it is basically kind of a medieval-esque world that does have people off doing crazy things. So there's the stories that do have a hint of steampunk. I mean, when you get to the Flying Mongoose, they're up in basically it's kind of a blimp. It's not quite a dirigible because it's not a rigid.
It's a primitive hot air
gas bag.
balloon with a ballista mounted on it.
Yeah. So there's hints of that, but it does not rely on steampunk throughout. That's more of something that they come across in their adventures to spice things up a bit.
Runway Cat, where she's doing a fashion runway thing here.
Yeah, that one's from Death and Renewal. I don't think that one showed up in the magazine, did it?
That illustration is going to be unique to this collection. we did not run. Yeah, I don't think we had that one finished by the time that we ran the story in the magazine. We have the one with Cat and or with Mongoose and the Pit Fighter.
That was up right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the one that was running the magazine.
Yeah, Philly does great work. Have any of these sold yet?
I don't know. I don't think any of this batch have sold. Now we did sell all of the original artwork for the first volume, but we've still got the art for the second and third. The
And these
economy
are
was
available
kind
as
of
tiers.
rough when we did the Kickstarter for volume 2. So
Well,
big
thank
ticket
God it's so much
items weren't
better
really
now.
moving on Kickstarters then.
Oh, these are all available as add-ons. They're not here in
Yeah,
the
they're
tier.
available as add-ons because there's only one of each, so there wasn't any sense in creating a tier for each.
Sure. Yeah, that's
And
where
that way, if
that's
somebody
the one
wants to buy all of them, they could, go in and pledge thousands of
snatch.
dollars and get every illustration.
Yeah, that's the one thing I wish Kickstarter was a little bit better at. Obviously, everybody complains about, hey, you can't put a graphic on the tier box the way that Indiegogo does, but you also can't put a graphic on the add-on, I don't think. So, you can't see the picture again. You got to kind of go back and forth and say, what did I want to see? Um, and then go back to say, yeah, that was the title of the one I wanted. So at $3,000, which you are a hop, skip, and a jump away from right now, there's an RPG bonus content. Tell me more. Roll that 20D D20 and let me know where this lands.
Yeah, one of the things that we did in the original volume was I was like, these would make really great short, low-level adventures for the Redbox D&D, and so as a stretch goal, I came up with some bonus RPG content, stats for certain items, ways that you could adapt the stories into short adventures, and just stuff like that. And the second volume, we built on that a little bit more and included some new characters, a few new monster stats, some new magic items. And I'm thinking for this one, our stretch goal is going to be miniature battles, setups for large scale tactical fighting using Dungeons and Dragons or other RPG type systems,
Yeah, we
because one
we,
of
we won't tell OGL anything about this. That's
Yeah, no, I mean,
been a bit of a mess
none
lately.
of this is under license. None of us cares. You don't actually need the OGL to do any of that stuff anyway.
Yeah, I'd be willing to play a campaign Trapped in the Loop.
Yeah, this would be this just lends itself easily to a role-playing campaign. In fact, with the character designs that you've got already done here in the artwork, Alex, have you approached anybody? And I say this with somebody in mind that does this. Approached anybody for actually 3D printing miniatures of the characters?
We looked into doing some 3D printing, or well, not necessarily 3D printing, but 3D modeling, and we've made a few contacts, but the particular project that I was looking at doing kind of fell through on that particular end. I would love to be able to come up with little minifigs for Cat and Mongoose, but it's kind of one of those we'll see things. We'll have to see how much money this makes, and if we might be able to do that as a stretch goal further on. Jim and I can talk about that to see what would need to happen to make it viable to get the legwork done on these.
Sure. I kind of stopped short here above the graphic of the cover when I saw, hey, here's what the books are going for. $20 for that pocket paperback, 20 also for the trade paperback, which is larger format, which means it's thinner spine, and $35 for the hardcover. But below it, if you are completely unfamiliar with Mongoose and Meerkat, for $50, you'll get all three of those pocket books or trade paperbacks. And for only $88, you're getting 3 hardcover books, the entire saga of Mongoose and Meerkat, beginning to end, cradle to grave. And if you just like to have all kinds of books on your shelf, and who doesn't, $180 gets you all 3 of the sets in all 3 formats.
And one of the things that we're doing is we're trying to catch people up. So if you're coming in cold to this, if you back it, anybody gets the first 2 volumes digitally.
Oh, excellent! So that's just going to come automatically with your physical order. Is the digital? If you order you're not going to do that for the digital only, are you?
Yeah, we're gonna get everybody caught up just like we did last time.
You're only charging $3 for the digital. How you're saying if I order the digital for $3, I'm going to get 3 books?
Yeah.
It's $1 a book. Are you insane, Alex? Do you know how to make money? I mean,
Well, I mean, we've almost got 3K on there already, so
that's not how you do it. That's a fantastic deal, everybody. You should be hitting this thing up. And it's
really
only
we want to bring as
$27.50.
many new people as we can into this universe because it's such a great, cool world. So we don't want people to be put off by the fact that they're coming into the final volume here. We want people to be able to get straight into it right away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen the covers for these other books here, and they're all are they all done by the same artist? Because they're all
Yeah, those are
striking.
all done by Anton Oxenuk, who's one of our regular cover artists for the magazine.
So you're going to have a consistency of cover art between the 3 books there, guys. Hola, JV, glad you're here. Yes, thank you for telling people hit the like button because I never do. Jonathan, glad to see you in the chat. Spread the word about Jim and Alex being on here talking about this final volume of Mongoose and Meerkat Adventures. You're going to get five stories that have already been published in the magazine. They're going to be collected here. 2 stories that haven't been published yet in the magazine, so you're getting early access, and a short story and an intro to Jim's next novel. So there's a lot of adventure in this one hardcover collection. But as Mr. Popeil says, that's not all. You can get all 3 of the books and just have the entire Mongoose and Meerkat saga in your hands. When? June of 2023. You get the entire saga. And you guys have, this is not your first rodeo. You fulfill on a regular basis, Alex. So you guys know what you're doing.
We got a lot of stuff going on.
Money and publishing. Yeah.
One thing that I would like to mention is that we also have an audiobook of Volume 1 available as an add-on. It's $10. It's the first 5 Mongoose and Meerkat stories. And the lady that we have reading it, she did a fantastic job. She's amazing as Cat. I'd love at some point to be able to get the rest of the Mongoose and Meerkat stories done up as audiobooks, but we really need to see some genuine interest in the audio. So
yeah, I understand that. So was it a single reader or was it more of a radio play?
It's a single reader.
Single reader.
And if I could just jump in here real quick, she did
please,
a fantastic job. Yeah, she did a fantastic job on the add-on story in that too. There's both, obviously Mongoose and Meerkat has one of the protagonists is female, but there's a very prominent female character in the add-on story, and she nailed the whole thing, but she nailed those characters just spot on the way I, as the author, sort of heard them in my head. It's totally worth listening to if you're into audiobooks.
And $10 is real cheap for an audiobook. And we're sending them out DRM free. We're just giving you access to the MP3s. Do with however you want. You don't have to worry about codes or anything like that. We're just going to give you the files. Say, here, enjoy. Thank you for the $10. And we're splitting the proceeds on that with our reader. So they're actually getting more money than if it's sold off ACX for more money.
Oh yeah. Now you also have signed book plates for $10. Does this when you say book plate, is it like a label with the name, or did you like print the cover with a space for the name, and it's going to be designed specifically for Mongoose and Meerkat?
No, we just have some generic book plates that Jim has signed for us that we'll stick in the books for you.
Okay, so at $10 a book plate, one of the things about add-ons that I've noticed is you add it on. I don't. Do they allow you to up the quantity? I mean, if I bought all 3 hardcovers and I said, you know what, I want all 3 of them to have a signed book plate in them. Is there a method for that?
I believe you can. I believe you can change the quantity at checkout.
Okay. I've never tried it before, so I didn't know. I knew that some campaigns, you backed it. Well, you want another one, go back it again.
Yeah, that's the way Indiegogo works usually, is you have to back for each item you want.
Exactly. It looks great. So all of this is going to be shipped flat, of course. You're not going to. Are these on Bristol board, or what kind of paper are the artwork on?
They're just on, I think, either 12 by 9 or 11 by 17, just drawing paper.
Yeah, sketchbook paper, right?
Sketchbook paper, yeah.
Okay. So you wouldn't. It's not flexible enough that you'd roll it in a tube. It's going to be mailed flat.
It's flexible enough for tube mailing.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, these are going out in sturdy tubes. Sturdy tubes that we're probably going to also put into a box, just to make sure nothing happens to them.
Sure.
So I noticed Dark Philly mentioned something on Twitter. They're 11 by 14.
11 by 14. Okay.
Those are big.
I knew it was something like that. It wasn't like an 8.5 by 11. It wasn't just like notebook paper.
So Jim, have you been thinking about other media? I don't want to take you away from CIRSOVA. I want you to stay there for more Mongoose and Meerkat adventures, of course. But have you thought about adaptations for what has been published already, and talked with anybody about stuff?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because I'll answer the question, but I'm not making any promises because it's such a chancy business, and who knows what's going on. But about a year and a half ago, I've never dealt with screenplays or anything like that. So I sort of reached out and said, look, I'm looking for somebody who would be willing to adapt this. We can talk about, what it takes to split and things like that, and see what we have. And I found somebody who was just out of college and kind of ambitious and wanted to do that. And she said, yeah, this is this is who I am. And I said, this is what I have. And I sent her the stuff, and she's like, this is really great. I'd love to do it. And then I didn't hear from her. And so, yeah. And so after a respectful number of months had passed, I reached out to her and said, so what's going on here? Are you still interested in doing that? And she's like, oh, yeah. I've just been very, very busy and yada, yada, yada. I'll have something to you in a week. And then I didn't hear from her. And so I'm kind of like, you know what? I don't think of myself as a stupid person. I can figure out how to do this. I've never worked with screenwriting before, but I'll do something with it. And so I actually signed up for a screenwriting class in the fall semester of 2022 so that I had somebody who knew what they were doing to kind of, pick their brain on. And that's what I've been doing for one of my projects in the last 6 months, is trying to convert the first 2 stories of Mongoose and Meerkat, The Battlefield of Karis and Brandy and Dye, into the first pilot episode and the second episode of what would be, obviously an 18-part, limited series.
Hello, Netflix.
Well, and this is why, my wife gets super excited about stuff like that. And I'm constantly trying to tap the brakes, because I'm like, first of all, I think this is a great idea, but they get so many ideas, and a place like Netflix has so many gatekeeping rules on how can you approach them and things like that. And I might have an angle, or I might not. We'll see. But I need to finish getting everything in shape. I mean, the dream obviously would be, yes, watching the Mongoose and Meerkat on Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime or something like that. And it's technically not beyond the realm of possibility, but we certainly aren't there yet. It's just one of several projects I'm working on.
Yeah, the streaming options have been a boon for these kind of stories where, we always had episodic television. Dallas went on for years and years advancing that story. It was a soap opera. and you could take something and condense it all down to a movie. But when you've got 18 adventures that could be an hour each, or maybe an hour and a half each, and then it's over, that wouldn't fit either one of those. You'd lose too much in the movie,
Right.
or fluff it out too much in the movie, and no one would buy it for television because what do you mean we don't even get but a half a season out of it, really?
Yeah, yeah, and that's exactly the problem with it, and it's too episodic for a movie too. I mean, something you can have certain scenes and mini quests, but you don't want to have like 18 separate stories within one sit down movie.
Exactly.
It would
That's
require
what
a
binge
lot of
watching is for.
condensation and telescoping to cram it into a movie. I don't think it would work. But
Yeah,
it would. I think it would be easy to do, relatively speaking, on a fairly reasonable budget, especially for a few of the stories.
sure. And so in my investigation of things like this, I could see it going as a live action with a lot of CGI. I could see it as an animated. I'd actually lean a little bit more towards the animation side of things. But there are a lot of limited series. I don't even know when that phrase was coined, but they are written intended to have a beginning and an end. And you don't need to worry about whether you're going to be re-upped for another season because you don't intend to be. You have a story and you're going to tell it.
Yeah, I think they did start doing those when like Roots came out. That was, a special event that was obviously
Yeah,
beginning and
they
end.
had. Yeah, I remember when that came out. It was, I don't know how many nights, but it was, like 4 nights over the course of a week or something like that.
Yeah. Then
And
John Jake's
Netflix,
novels started getting it.
yeah, and Netflix is just, I mean, that sort of thing is the perfect platform for it because people can come and go as they want to. I mean, I keep telling my daughters that they don't understand what it was like because if you missed the show, you had one more chance to see it in reruns when the spring reruns came around, and if you missed it the second time, you never had a chance to see it again.
That
It was
was
like,
it.
yeah, that was it. But now you can watch it whenever you want, however many times you want. If you get stuck in the middle because something happens, you can hit pause and come back to it. So, I mean, it's perfect for something like the Mongoose and Meerkat, where somebody can binge watch 4 of them and then come back and watch more the next day. And
Yeah.
when they're done, they can start all over again if they liked it enough.
And it's not so much that you have the platform now for this kind of thing, but they're releasing a Dungeons and Dragons movie. And if that does well, if that finds that there's an audience right now for this, it could
I hope it doesn't.
It's funny because as I'm taking this screenwriting class, I'm in a unique situation because one, I'm a little bit older than most of the kids in the college who are taking it. Two, I'm actually adapting my own stuff as opposed to trying to come up with something else. And my concerns are not how do I write. My concerns are how do I write something in a way that is marketable. And he brought up that Dungeons and Dragons thing, saying, one of the things that you need to be worried about is if Dungeons and Dragons makes bank, then everybody else will want to do fantasy adventure stuff and you're in. If Dungeons and Dragons loses every dime that was thrown at it, nobody will touch this for another 10 years and you're going to have a hard time selling it. And I'm not in the business, but he's closer to it than I am, and that does make sense to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you can make the argument that Game of Thrones is still going on strong, and it's a sort of a ongoing series that's medieval fantasy, dragons and magic and all that stuff. But
there have been a lot of high-profile crash and burn disasters. I mean, the Wheel of Time series was kind of a disaster. The Witcher ended up turning into a train wreck. Like they're like, well, Cavill's gone. We're gonna try to make a Witcher series without the Witcher to to recoup our investment on the IP. Nobody likes Rings of Power.
So
I haven't seen any real enthusiasm for the D&D movie, but there are a lot of other concerns regarding that because I mean, D&D.
I just look at the poster and it looks like the bard is the main character.
There's nothing interesting to it.
So when I've been talking to people about this particular, the Mongoose and Meerkat and trying to transform it into a different media than what it is now, the one that I compare it to for my own benefit the most is actually Cowboy Bebop. Because that is also a limited series of 24 episodes. They have a lot of different elements that get crammed into it. I mean, you have some Western, you have some noir, you have some sci-fi, you have some, just a ton of different stuff there. And in Mongoose and Meerkat, there's some that are a little horror, there's some that are a little mystery, there's some that are a little steampunk. So I try and say, look, if you have something that's a little different, and I think Mongoose and Meerkat is a little different from a lot of the stuff that's out there, and you do it well with a lot of, originality and enthusiasm and energy to it, it can be very, very successful.
Yeah,
and I think it has that potential.
It's going to look a lot more like 80s fantasy, I think, than modern and postmodern fantasy.
Well, and I don't know if this is even possible because, again, I'm not deep enough into the business at this end. When I was originally thinking of the cover art for Mongoose and Meerkat, I thought it would be really kind of cool to do an Art Deco sort of thing, something like Alphonse Mucha or something would look really, really classy. And in the back of my mind, I'm wondering if you could come up with some sort of animation that draws on that idea. Again, I don't know who could do that or how much it would cost to have somebody try and create this whole new look. I tried Googling Art Deco animation and I got diddly squat. So there's really not a whole lot to compare it to. So I don't know. I mean, that like I said at the beginning of this question, this is probably a conversation that is cart before the horse at this point, but it is something that has actually started.
So if you see Mongoose and Meerkat become live action, is the tone closer to Hercules Xena or Game of Thrones?
That's a good question. I didn't intend. It's not like I had like a this is the tone I want when I was writing. It starts off and it purposefully mirrors the progression of Mangos through the series. And Mango starts off and he's basically, he's 18 to 22, young adult. He's run away from the life that he knew for a life of adventure. He's relatively ignorant, but still intelligent. He's relatively inexperienced, but still talented. And he's like the potter's clay. And the world is mostly an amoral world, but you kind of get the sense that might makes right, but some things are better than others. But just don't count on that happening sort of tone to it. By the time you get to the end, it gets pretty dark. As you were scrolling through the pictures, you got to a picture of Karn crucified in the main square of Allness, and that's a pretty grim, that one right there. That's a pretty grim scene. And Alex actually asked me, he said, in this scene, do you object to? And there's something that happens within the scene that I'm like, I might have overwritten it a little bit. I was trying to convey just how bad these people are. And they cross pretty much every line you can draw in the sand. I think that would be too much for the illustration. And as you can see, he's trussed up and tortured and dead bodies all around. And that wasn't too much for the illustration, but what I was referencing probably didn't need to be seen. So that would definitely be the great Game of Thrones stuff. But there's also some of that kind of banter in it when things are going badly, but they're still having fun. There's some tongue-in-cheek witticisms that, aren't quite as dark as what you're looking at there.
Okay, so let's visit a world where you've made a successful pitch. Somebody said, "Hey Jim, I got my checkbook handy here. We're going to do this thing." Do you go the Alan Moore route and cash the check and say "see you later," or do you go the Jeff Johns route and maintain creative control throughout?
That's another really good question because my personality, I describe myself as a relentless introvert, which would make me personally want to cash the check and run and say, I don't want to do all this sort of stuff. I have been talking with some people who say if you really want to, one, if you want to control how it's done, and you kind of do because you don't want somebody to trash out your work and embarrass you by what they did with it. But two, if you really want to make money on these sorts of shows, the writers, you'll get paid as a writer, but if you really want to get paid, you get paid as a showrunner.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's kind of the lure. I mean, if this, since we're in the fantasy world where this does well, I mean, if this could do well, there's no reason that Paths of Core Manor couldn't be done similarly. I mean, a 13-issue limited series Paths of Core Manor would probably have just as much or more appeal on the screen as Mongoose and Meerkat does. And I mean, I'd love to be able to just sort of generate some ideas and see where they go. Part of it, though, would be sort of blending the two options together. Is maybe I could come up with the ideas and work with the people in a more limited way rather than having to be the person who calls the musicians and try and get the soundtrack done.
Yeah, you don't want to be totally hands-on.
And I got my points in the contract, so I just hope it happens.
Either way, I just want the contract. With a lot of the artwork, well, with all the artwork being done in sort of a comic book pop art style here, would there be any opportunity for seeing this fully realized as a graphic novel? Just take the script and make panels.
That's probably a question for Alex more than me. I mean, obviously it's my intellectual creation. One thing I learned about doing screenplays is doing screenplays is very different from doing stories. There's just more things you need to consider, different things you need to consider, different limitations on it. And I'm sure that the same thing applies to doing comics. I have not tried my hand at writing comics in any serious way. I'm not sure that I'd be the right person to try to adapt the dialogue. I'm certainly not the person for the illustration. So I'm not adverse to it. But I'm also, I mean, I'm not the person who knows what you would need, how many copies you would need to sell to make it worth doing, how much it would cost to illustrate, how much it would cost to ink if you were going to do it in color. I don't know any of those things. So,
Alex, that's all crowdfunding now, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've done some research into these things for other projects, but it's sort of a, like we said earlier, a little bit of a cart before the horse thing for this particular project. I would not be averse to publishing this as a comic if we ever got a writer and an illustrator who would be interested in doing the adaptation. But that said, we would really want to make sure that these particular volumes sell well enough that we could say, you know what, maybe it would be worth hiring people on to do that.
yeah.
So we want to sell as many of these as possible, folks, and that's
Yeah.
why the link is down below. Again, as I said, get down there, order these books. If you are a high fantasy kind of person, these are what you want to have in your collection.
Or if you're a low fantasy kind of person.
And low fantasy works too. So as we approach the top of the hour here, Jim, it's been mentioned that there is a chapter in here, a preview chapter of your next novel.
Yeah.
Can you give a little pitch on that and how it veers away from what we've seen with Mongoose and Meerkat?
So this one, both Mongoose and Meerkat and the Paths of Core Manor, which I just referenced, are extremely episodic. And you can read the chapters independently of each other, more so with Mongoose and Meerkat than Paths of Core Manor, but they're still full stories. A Bad Case of Dead is more like a traditional novel. It's very much a travel novel, and it's episodic in nature, but you can't read the chapters independently of each other and figure that you had a complete story within them. And it's basically, it starts in London in the early 1800s, and our poor protagonist, he catches a bad case of dead. And
No.
I mean, yeah, it's very sad. And unfortunately, he needs to find a cure before his dead becomes dead.
Oh, so it's curable, huh?
Well, he doesn't know that. That's part of the problem. But he is literally dead. His heart is not beating. He is not breathing. He's just, I mean, he's a zombie, and he is going to deteriorate. His prognosis is grim. He's going to turn into something that you associate with zombies more readily. You know, the mindless, flesh-eating,
The shambling
ravenous.
horde.
Yes, yes, and nobody wants that, but you know, it's London, and finding people who can cure dead is not something that happens on every street corner. So he has to embark upon a perilous journey into a place where all the magic that used to be, all those folktale creatures and things that used to be around have been driven out of Europe into a place called the Narrow World, which is an archipelago, which is sort of still 1 foot in our world, but 1 foot in a more magical place. And of course, there is the ticking clock, because if he doesn't find the cure in time, then he loses himself entirely to dead, and becomes that mindless zombie. And of course, there's a girl waiting for him at home, that he wants to come back and marry, but he can't really tell her that he's off being dead. So he's got to come back and make good on his promises. But there are, of course, entanglements on that front as he's embarking on his quest as well.
Yeah, the elevator pitch for it is basically a Regency fairy tale romance about a guy who is a zombie and trying to stop being a zombie.
I like where you said he had to basically leave Europe for the archipelago, because there's a whole series of books that were a favorite of mine, by James A. Owen. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, the tales of the Chronicles of the Imaginarium Geographica.
I'm not familiar with those.
The first one was Here Be Dragons, and it features an archipelago, the archipelago of dreams, and its 3 British characters, John, Jack, and Charles. And they're recruited by Bert to become caretakers. This era's caretakers of the archipelago of dreams. And they go and they have the adventures, and there's like talking animals and green knights and things that you recognize from folklore and fantasy. And they've kind of been drafted into this adventure, and at the end of it, they're like, would you become the official caretakers? And just it's a 7-book series, so telling you the end of the first novel is not really a spoiler, but they agree and they sign their names. James R.R. Tolkien, Jack C.S. Lewis, and Charles, I forget his last name, but they were all 3 at the same college, and they were all 3 working together and friends. So
yeah, well, it sounds like there may be some similarities, because there will be some things that people recognize, but hopefully told in a new way and presented in a setting and context that is new and different. As the guy's name is Edward Truscott. He's an immigrant from Cornwall to London before he ends up having to embark on his quest into the Narrow World. But it's a lot of fun. I enjoyed writing it. I usually do enjoy writing whatever I write. But if you buy the Redemption of Allness, you'll get the first chapter of that, which sort of launches him onto his quest. And it's intended to be, a fun read, and also obviously a bit of a hook for, if you enjoy it, then hopefully you'll want to come back when we launch that one as well. The other thing that's in there is
done in
like I said,
no, this is just a standalone.
Okay.
In just sort of terms of like tone and storytelling, this is going to be a lot like something like Stardust or The Princess Bride. I mean, it's a fun romantic fairy tale adventure.
Yeah,
I'm in. You said Regent too, so it's like an older era, not 2023.
No. It says in the front thing, I actually put a date on it. I can't remember what it was. I probably should, but it's more like 1835 or something like that. So.
All right. Well, we will look forward to that right after Mongoose and Meerkat. Do you know when you're going to launch that? I mean, yeah, we haven't finished this yet, and already, what are you doing next?
At the very earliest, it'll be towards the end of this year, maybe early next year. CIRSOVA Publishing has a lot of stuff in the lineup for 2023, and we don't want to front load the year.
I know I'm waiting for that winter issue to come out because I want to pick it up. I got a friend with a story in there, so I want to see it. Of course, I always seem to have a friend with a story in CIRSOVA magazine. I don't know what's going on. They're finding you through me, and then I don't get published. Haven't submitted.
Well, you haven't sent us anything.
I know. I have a publisher for my stuff, but and he says the same thing. I haven't sent him anything lately, so I got to take care of that. Anyway, Alex, Jim, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight and
yeah, thank you
sharing
for
with
having
us.
Thank you.
This looks like a lot of fun, and I'm going to I've got the remind me button clicked, so I'm bad with Kickstarters. I pay with PayPal, and I always tell me on the last day, and then I can throw the money at it. Otherwise, I throw the money at it, and then I forget, and then Kickstarter tries to take it 30 days later, and I might have spent it. It's happened more than once to me, but we look forward to seeing the success of this. Obviously, it's already hit goal, but we'd love to see this thing hit 5 digits, 6 digits. Come on, people! This is your fantasy lovers. This is the kind of thing you want. So we will let you go for the evening. Hope to see you again. If you want to come back closer to the closeout so we can make a final push, you're more than welcome to come on. We'll set you up a time and make the appeal.
All righty.
Everybody in the audience, thank you so much for being here tonight. We don't have a show without you. We are just a podcast falling in the woods, otherwise making no noise. So we're glad that you're here. And of course, while you were here, as always, we just hope you had a blast. Good night, everybody.